This is TWiT.
Let's start with what just happened, because Google, which is going to have an event soon, did kind of a pre-announcement of some of its products that are maybe not as, we'll say, pixel forward. And
you weren't going to say exciting, right? You weren't going to say not as exciting.
I think they're exciting, to be honest. What was funny is I just recently moved to a new place, and I was getting the Nest Thermostat in my home connected to, reset, and then connected to my Wi-Fi, and then connected to my app, et cetera, et cetera. And within, I think, a day of getting it set up, I opened up the app and boom, up popped this prompt saying, "Hey, we've got a new Nest Learning Thermostat. Would you like this one instead?"
Oh,
oh boy. Luckily, I didn't buy the one that's here. It was already here. But yeah, so what did Google
announce? Yes, so this was very much a big focus on all of the Google Home part of Google, which really doesn't often get a lot of focus and hasn't had a lot of focus in a while. So this was kind of Christmas comes early for smart home reporters. They announced 3 key things. The first is the Nest Learning Thermostat, which you just mentioned. This is the 4th generation of their iconic thermostat. That's a word that does get thrown around a lot, but I feel like it kind of applies here. I mean, this really was the beginning of the sort of DIY smart home movement about 12, 13 years ago, and it was so pretty. And the new one is so pretty. If you've got to remember what thermostats used to look like, these are really pretty. So whole new design. This is, whilst it still retains a feel of the original Nest, it's completely redesigned, and it looks like a giant Pixel watch on your wall. But we can go on, I will go more details, but just to flip through the next couple things, new Google TV streamer 4K. Mm-hmm. So this is now it's a set-top box for your streaming, like a Chromecast, but it's also a smart home hub. So it's basically Google's version of Apple TV. So you can stream all your shows. It does act like a Chromecast, and it also has smart home hub capabilities. So it's a Google Home Hub. It is a Matter controller. It's a Thread border router. So it can do all the smart home. So that's exciting. That's $100. And it's also not a dongle. So no more dongles, no Chromecast dongles. It's a little box that sits under your TV. That's kind of divided people, I think. It's an interesting design, but new remote that goes with the streamer. And it looks just like the Chromecast with Google TV remote, but is a little bigger. And also the new smart home feature on Google TV, we now have a pop-out smart home control panel, just like you have on Apple TV. So you can control your smart home through your TV and view live video streams. So if someone presses your Nest doorbell, it can pop up on your TV, like you can do with your Apple TV. So it's very similar. It takes a lot of cues from the Apple TV, which is a good thing because the Apple TV is great. So this is a great upgrade, I think, for Google Home users. And then the final thing, which Google kind of underplayed a little bit, but I'm most excited about, is they're bringing Gemini intelligence to Google Home. And I say bringing as in this is not here. The other 2 products are launching in the next month. This is later this year in public preview, but it's a lot of generative AI powered features for Google Home. You're going to get Nest cameras will gain the ability to not just send you an alert that says person detected or animal detected, but will actually be able to process using the Gemini multimodal AI, process what the camera sees and present you with a caption. Like a description of what the camera is seeing. And that's sort of the first step. And you can kind of see where that could go. So, you could set up automations where a camera sees something specific, like a car pulling into the driveway or a person opening the garage door. You could set up home automations. And so it's a really interesting sort of upgrade for your Nest cameras. They're also adding the ability to set up smart home automations with natural language. So I'd like a way for my kids to be reminded to put their bikes in the garage, was the example Google used. And then Google Home can set up an automation that turns on the light at the garage, broadcasts a message over Nest speakers saying, kids, put your bikes away, every time kids show up in the driveway between a certain time. And Google Home will just set this all up for you. And all you need to do is say, this is what I'd like you to do. Obviously, you also need compatible devices. It doesn't work magic. And then the final thing is Google Assistant itself is getting an AI overhaul. Similar to what we've heard is going to be happening to Amazon's Alexa. It's going to be, and these are their descriptions, smarter, more conversational, more capable of understanding natural language, and is also going to have some new voices on the smart home speakers. So all of these, the new Google Assistant features are coming to this Nest smart home displays and speakers, as opposed to, this is different from what you might use on your phone or other Pixel devices. So specifically to the current Nest hubs and speakers. So we're not getting any new Nest speakers or displays, but the current ones you have are going to get more capabilities. But this is all coming later this year and in public preview, which is Google's version of like a beta program. And it does require a Nest Aware subscription. So you have to pay. So that's it.
That's everything, and we're gonna kind of get into more detail with everything, starting with the Nest Thermostat. And so, when it comes to the Nest Thermostat, I think it's important to kind of look at the history of what it has looked like before, what it looks like now, how it kind of, there's almost an upside down bell curve, right? Of features. And maybe you could, if you can, explain what Google was thinking in sort of taking some of what it did out. And then I also love that in your piece, you talked about a competitor, which it's one of my favorite products that I have owned, which is the Ecobee thermostat. So let's start with the history. How has the Nest Learning Thermostat looked in the past? And then kind of how has it changed in terms of features over time? And what was the reaction from the folks who buy these things? Yeah,
so so the original Nest looked a lot like in that picture, the top left one, which is, so there have been 3 versions of that. So the current one that Mikah has installed in his home, I'm assuming, was the 3rd generation one. And that's what I'm holding in my hand. Those are my hands, by the way. Oh, that's what I'm holding in my hand on the top left. And that's the most recent version. And that has that has a tangible dial. A physical dial. So you can see that silver band is you can actually twist it, which is great. That was kind of the feature that everyone loved about the Nest, because it was a smart device, but it also had really easy physical inputs. A lot of smart thermostats, which just have digital displays, people find a little tricky to use and, a bit of a learning curve. And a thermostat is like lights in your home. It's something that everyone needs to be able to know how to use. You shouldn't have to read a manual to turn it on or turn it up. So this was a great piece, feature of the Nest. It was on the original one, which launched in 2000 and, I've forgotten off the top of my head. 13 years ago, someone do the math. 2011? So that, and it was, a big bang when it launched. It was not Google. Nest was Nest. This was before Nest was bought by Google. It was launched by Tony Fadell, who formerly it was created by a number of people that used to work at Apple. It was sort of, the iPhone of thermostats. So it was then and still is a very sort of iconic product in the smart home. The original, I think I have the 2nd gen, because the 2nd gen came out pretty fast after the 1st gen, and was kind of the one most people would have bought. And that was a couple years later. And I still have one of those working in a house. Like they were built to last, which is great for a product in the smart home. You don't want to spend, and they're expensive, $250. These are products that need to last. And then the 3rd gen came out about 9 years ago, which was a big upgrade. It made it it gave it a better screen, a brighter screen, more function on the screen. You could also use it as a clock. It had a feature called Farsight that as you walked towards the device would sort of shift and show you a different view, some more detail, as opposed to further away. You could just see what the temperature was. You could also set it to be a clock. It had some more sort of modern features because the original had been around for quite a while, and there'd been a lot of upgrades in technology, including Thread, which is a side note that actually the original Nest thermostat is the reason Thread was developed, which is one of the new smart home wireless protocols. And the latest Nest does not have Thread in it, but this may be a separate conversation.
Weird.
But yeah. And then I think the point that you were interested in here is that then after the third gen, they came out with an entirely new Nest thermostat that had no real connection to the original and was quite disappointing in many ways. And that, if you go back to that picture, is what I'm holding in my other hand. And that is just the Nest thermostat as opposed to the Nest learning thermostat. And basically the difference with this one was it wasn't really as smart. It was just a Wi-Fi controlled thermostat. It didn't have the key unique feature of the Nest, which is the ability to learn your heating and cooling habits, like how you like your home to feel temperature wise, and adjust and create a schedule for you and constantly adapt that schedule based on how your lifestyle changes. And that was a really neat feature. It could sometimes go rogue. I had a few times where, suddenly it would be heating in the middle of a sunny afternoon. But in general, it sort of manages itself. So you don't have to worry about programming your thermostat. But the Nest Learning Thermostat that came out in 2020 did not have that feature. It was just a standard programmable thermostat that you could still control remotely and set with smart home automations, and worked with Nest's big feature, which is home and away. So the thermostat could tell if you were home or if you're away. And if you're away, adjust your heating or cooling to save you money. And this was the big selling point of the Nest, is that it would save you on your energy bills. Mm-hmm. And now we have the latest one, which is a complete redesign, but retains the same functionality as the original. So it's physically redesigned, but the software has had improvements and some additions. But overall, it's the Nest Learning Thermostat that we all know and probably love. Some people might not.
One would think. I know that the eco features of the learning thermostat was really kind of important to a lot of people, and so the loss of that was kind of interesting. Some of the more intelligent features,
right?
So outside of that, what do you feel sets the fourth gen apart? What makes this something that people would, because you talk about in your piece, this is something that you keep in your home for a long time, and in theory, you're not upgrading every year. So someone is looking at buying one of these and they're on, maybe an earlier gen, sure. But tell us about what sets
why you might want to upgrade.
Yeah.
So it's got a great look. And if you like the Nest, it's probably because you like the look of it, and you will probably like the look of the new one. I mean, there are a lot of smart thermostats out there, but most of them really don't look great. Even the Ecobee, which has got better in its looks, still looks sort of like a smartphone app on your wall.
Yeah.
So, it really does have, and I got to see it in person, although the lighting and everything in the room where I got to see it wasn't great, but it really it was striking. It's much bigger, which I think is probably a big upgrade for a lot of people. If you like to be able to see it clearly from further away, if you have a big open plan living room, it's going to be more obvious. It also has Matter, which the original Nest Learning Thermostat, none of the 3 generations of that support Matter. So that means it will work natively with Apple Home, if that's something I know that might be of interest to you, Mikah. Mm-hmm. The Nest thermostat, the cheaper one, does work with Matter as well. So they've now got 2 thermostats that will work with Matter. we have not heard, and I have asked, but I've not had an update as to whether they may one day upgrade the original, the 3rd gen to Matter. They've never said never. So we're waiting to hear. So those are a few features. There are also some upgraded software features that they say are only going to be on this thermostat at launch. Who knows, though, they may one day be backported, but including, like, if you have a ventilation system, the new Nest Learning Thermostat can work with your ventilation system and with outdoor air quality, and actually turn on your ventilation system when the air quality is good and turn it off when it's bad. Do sort of more smart integrations with ventilation systems. It also works with more systems. So if your system wasn't compatible with the last Nest thermostat, you might find that this one is, although as far as I'm aware, it doesn't work with variable speed units yet, which is kind of a shame, but there are very few smart thermostats that do. So it's not that surprising. And yeah, I really like the UI on it now. It's a lot easier to use. That the 3rd gen is a small little screen, and you do most of your programming of the thermostat. Not that you have to do a lot of programming, but when you are interacting with it, most of it is on the device, not in the app. Although with the new one, there is much deeper integration with the Google Home app than there was with the old one. And this is another change, is this just works in Google Home. You don't have to use the Nest app.
Oh, wow.
Which is all the previous ones, Nest Learning Thermostats, worked in the Nest app.
Yeah, that's been confusing too, because adding a secondary user required going into the Home app and then adding them there and then going back into the Nest app. I mean, it's this, and I'm going, so who wants control here? Because I can't figure it out. It's not as robust. The control in the Home app doesn't feel as robust.
No, it's very limited.
Yeah,
very limited. Yeah, and this now has much more integrated control in the app. And then there's also, this is really neat. I'm excited about this. There's a Soli radar in the new Nest Learning Thermostat, whereas the original Nest thermostat used a PIR sensor. So for those not familiar, the Soli radar is something that's in a few of Google's products, including the Nest Hub 2nd gen. And I think it's in some of the phones, not my realm. It is basically an advanced motion sensor. So it can detect more precision detection. And the main reason it's there is for the far sight, which is where as you approach, the screen changes. And as you get further away, it changes back. And there are more details that you can add to this fast sight now. It's called dynamic fast sight. And it has this really cool feature that shows lightning if it's thunder and lightning outside, shows snow if it's snowing, and rain. And it looks nice. It's fun. I like that as an addition. You don't have to have that if you don't want it. There's fully customizable, which is nice. So you can choose exactly what you want it to show on the screen, kind of like you can with your watch, because it really does look like a Pixel Watch. I mean, it really does. And they actually said that, we were inspired by the Pixel Watch. So, which just seems a little funny to me, but
a Pixel Watch on your wall.
Yes. It has much better sustainability features too, which is important. In fact, the battery is 100% recycled cobalt for the first time, which is kind of neat. It's very much designed as a sustainable product, both as the product and for what it does in your home. And you can work with Nest Renew, which is the demand response if your electricity provider has that capability, so that you can try and save more energy and more money on your electricity bills. So it's in terms of upgrading, if you have a 3rd gen, I mean, there's no real need unless you maybe have a ventilation system. And you think that would help, or your system, you have more features in your system than the 3rd gen is capable of running. But overall, if you've been wanting to get a Nest thermostat and haven't, I think this new one has a lot of fun upgrades, and it is not more expensive, because even though it costs $280 as opposed to $250 as the original, it now comes with a temperature sensor, which is new. They have the 2nd generation of the Nest temperature sensor, and this is what ecobee offers, we mentioned ecobee, they're little sensors that you can put in other areas of your house other than the thermostat to help kind of balance hot and cold spots. And you now get one with the thermostat, whereas you didn't before. And those are $40 each. So actually, if you do the math, this one's cheaper.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and those little temperature sensors are useful. I do prefer the ecobees so far in terms of the first gen. I've tested the first gen Nest Thermostat temperature sensors, and they just measure temperature. They don't measure occupancy, and they have quite strict time slots that you need to use. And I didn't find it as flexible as the ecobee ones, but they are still, I mean, they're useful, especially if if you're working in your office all day and your thermostat's in your hallway, then you put the little sensor in your office and it will help make sure that your thermostat is targeting the temperature in your office and not the temperature in your hallway.